Hey guys, my name is JC, and thanks for joining me in today's video featuring Memnarch. This is a big mana deck that looks to resolve its commander quickly, use all of that mana to activate its abilities, and then steal enough permanents to close out the game. If this seems like the deck for you, make sure to stop by the channel where we have a deck tech discussing all of the included cards as well as the overall strategy. Let's see just what this commander is capable of. Okay, so let's have a look at who we're playing today. We have Averna the Chaos Bloom, Yarok the Desecrated, and Torens Fist of the Angels. Looking at our opening hand, we have 2 sources of 2 mana ramp, 2 lands. We do have some really good ramp if we hit Cage Sun, and Recurring Insight's going to be a good card draw. I think we can keep this. Torens starts by playing a land, and then they end the turn. We draw a land for turn, Ottawara Soaring City, so we'll just play our land for turn and pass. Averna plays a tapped land for turn, and that's it for them. Yarok plays a land, and they leave it there. Torren plays a Reliquary Tower for turn, so they have no maximum hand size, but they just leave it there. We draw a Prototype Portal. Well, that could be pretty spicy depending on how the next few turns go, so we'll just start by playing our land for turn, and we'll get down our Prismatic Lens. And that'll be our turn done. Averna plays a land. And now they start by casting a Growth Spiral. Draw a card and you can put a land from your hand onto the battlefield. So they do draw a card and they put a land into play. And they're just going to leave it there. Yarok plays an Urborg. So now we all have swamps in addition to our other land types. And then they start by casting a Mana Crypt. Then they cast a Guardian Project. Whenever a non-token creature enters the battlefield under their control, they're going to be able to draw a card. Which of course will double with Yarok when they get it out. And that's their turn done. Torens plays a Homeward Path for turn, which is something we don't want to see. They can tap that so each player gains control of all creatures they own. And now they cast a Shaman of the Forgotten Ways. They can use it to add 2 mana of any colour, but it can only be spent on creature spells. But if they can pay 11, and each player's life total becomes the total number of creatures they control, only if they have creatures with power total 8 or greater. So the Torens players certainly played 2 cards that are going to scare us a little bit, especially as the game goes a bit later. And that's their turn done. So we'll definitely have to try to steal that Homeward Path as soon as we get the chance to. Now we draw a land for turn. So we have an interesting choice. We can either just play our Mind Stone for turn and hold onto the Prototype Portal to maybe put the Cage Sun under it or something else, or we can just exile the Mind Stone under it and start popping out Mind Stones. Look, I don't think I want to waste this turn, so I will get the Prototype Portal down, and then we'll put our Mind Stone underneath it. And that's going to be our turn done. Averna casts an Azusa, Lost but Seeking, so they can play 2 additional lands on their turn. They play 2 lands, and a third one. They crack the Terramorphic Expanse, and that's it for them. Mana Crypt triggers for Yarok, and they take 3 damage. They play a Wasteland for turn, so they can sack it to destroy target non-basic land. And now they cast a Reclamation Sage, which I have a funny feeling there's only going to be 1 target for that. Now that does trigger their Guardian Project, and they have targeted our Prototype Portal unfortunately. Now they'll draw a card off Guardian Project, and that's their turn done. Torren starts by casting their commander, Torens Fist of the Angels. It has training, so whenever this creature attacks with another creature with greater power, put a 1/1 counter on it, and whenever you cast a creature spell, create a 1/1 green and white human soldier creature token with training. And that's their turn done. We draw a Resculpt for turn. Well, that'll be good interaction to hold up, specifically for the Yarok player, because we don't want that commander landing and getting off on a value train. So let's start by playing our land for turn, and then we're just going to pass the turn. Because we don't want Yarok coming down, the value that can generate is going to be a little too much for us, especially in the position we're in currently. Averna starts by casting a Shire, Soul of the Wild. So its power and toughness are equal to the number of lands you control, and non-token creatures you control are forest lands in addition to their other types. And it's currently an 8/8. And that is their turn done. Mana Crypt triggers for Yarok, and they don't take the damage. They play a land for turn, but it does come in tapped, and they leave the turn there. Torens plays a Gaia's Cradle, so they can use it to tap and add green for each creature they control. And now they cast a Heronblade Elite, which triggers their commander, so they make a 1/1 green soldier token. And Heronblade Elite has got Vigilance. Whenever another human enters the battlefield under your control, put a 1/1 counter on it, and tap, add X mana of any one color, where X is its power. Now they cast Lenore, Autumn Sovereign, which triggers their commander. So they make another token. That triggers their Heronblade Elite, so it'll get a 1/1 counter. Lenore has Coven. At the beginning of combat on your turn, put a 1/1 counter up to 1 target creature you control. Then if you control 3 or more creatures with different powers, draw a card. That also triggered Heronblade Elite. And now they cast Intrepid Adversary, which triggers their commander. So they make another token that triggers Heronblade Elite. And Intrepid Adversary has lifelink. When it ETBs, you can pay 1 white any number of times. When you pay this cost 1 or more times, put that many Valor counters on it. Creatures you control get +1/+1 for each Valor counter on it. Now they don't have the mana to pay for its ability, but that does trigger Heronblade Elite. So it's currently a 5/5. Now they move to combat. Lenore triggers. They put a counter onto their commander. And they're swinging their commander our way. We won't use the resculpt on it, we'll just take the damage. And that's their turn done. We draw a land for turn. So we'll play that land. Now we have 2 options. We can try to cast our Caged Sun to get access to more mana, or we can cast our Recurring Insight. It is close. Either one's probably going to get us targeted. I think the Caged Sun's going to get us targeted a little bit more because the players are going to be concerned that we're going to be able to steal things quicker. So I think I'll actually cast the Recurring Insight. And we'll target the Torens player. So we're going to draw cards equal to the number of cards in target's opponent hand, and it has rebound, so we'll be able to cast it the next turn. Well, I'm really glad we did that because we've drawn the All Is Dust, so we're going to be able to hopefully clear up the board next turn, especially with Arcane Denial in our hand. We do have a bit of protection. Now, we won't have the mana to do both, but I like having those options in our hand. Hopefully, we're not going to take too much damage. The Torrens player will hopefully spread it out a little bit. Let's hope we don't also take damage from the Ashire either, but I'm hoping we don't look like the threat, and I don't think we will be. But I guess we'll soon see. Either way, we don't have much choice at the moment, so we'll just leave the turn there. Now as we move to discard, I'll get rid of our Coalition Relic. Averna starts by casting a Genesis Ultimatum. Look at the top 5 cards of your library, put any number of permanent cards from among them onto the battlefield and the rest into your hand and exile it. Well, that's a big bomb card. Let's see if they hit any big fatties off of it. Now it looks like they've put some lands into play as well as a Terror of the Peaks. Well, that's going to be a pretty scary card if they are relatively creature heavy. That also makes their Ashire an 11/11 now. So they move to combat. And they do send the Ashire our way, unfortunately. So we don't have a choice, we'll have to take it. But this also does mean that if we get even just a little bit of love from the Torrens player, we really need to draw a land next turn and cast that All Is Dust. Otherwise I feel we're not long for this world if we can't resolve it. Now on Yarok's turn, Mana Crypt triggers. And they don't take any damage. They move to combat and they do send their Reclamation Sage our way. So we'll go down to 24. Now they cast a Ravenous Chupacabra. When it ETBs, destroy target creature and opponent controls. And it looks like they are targeting Ashire with that. That does trigger their Guardian Project. And in response, Averna casts a Veil of Summer. Draw a card if an opponent has cast a blue or black spell this turn. Spells you control can't be countered, and you and permanents you control gain hexproof from blue and from black until end of turn. So that was the answer they needed. That saved their Ashire. Now Yarok draws a card from Guardian Project. Now they play a land for turn, and they immediately sack it. Now they cast a Shrieking Drake. When it ETBs, return a creature you control to its owner's hand. So no doubt they'll be returning their Ravenous Chupacabra. But they actually return their Reclamation Sage instead. That also triggers Guardian Project. They draw a card. And that's their turn done. Torrens starts by casting a Beast Whisperer, which triggers their commander, so they make a token. And Beast Whisperer says whenever you cast a creature spell, draw a card. That triggers Heronblade Elite. Now they play a land for turn. They tap their Gaia's Cradle for 10 green mana. And now they cast an Unnatural Growth. At the beginning of each combat, double the power and toughness of each creature you control until end of turn. Well, I say that might be it for us. If even half of those creatures come over our way, our life total is going to be pretty low. Oh, and now they cast a Beastmaster's Ascension. Whenever a creature you control attacks, you can put a quest counter on it. As long as it has 7 or more counters on it, creatures you control get +5/+5. Well, now I'm most certain that we're probably going to be dead here. Now they cast a Smothering Tithe. And now they cast Laid to Rest. Whenever a human you control dies, draw a card. And whenever a creature you control with a +1/+1 counter on it dies, you gain 2 life. Well, the Torrens player certainly has had a turn, that's for sure. I mean, it seems we're almost certainly dead here, but I don't think the other 2 players are going to be too long after unless they have a board wipe in hand. So now they move to combat. Unnatural Growth and Lenore triggers. Now they put a counter on their Intrepid Adversary. They send their commander our way. And it looks like a lot of their tokens over at the Averna player. That triggers Beastmaster Ascension and their commander. So they'll put 4 counters on Beastmaster Ascension. Now they'll also have some training triggers. And it looks like they buffed up some of their tokens from 2/2s to 3/3s. Looks like one of the tokens is blocked by the Terror of the Peaks. So we go down to 18. Averna goes down to 34. That also triggers Laid to Rest. So they gain 2 life and then they draw a card. And that is their turn done. And what a turn that was. Now we do want to really draw a land here, which hopefully with Recurrent Insight we're going to be able to. So for some reason there, Magic Online wasn't actually letting us cast Recurrent Insight. Now I'm not too sure if there's something on the board that I'm missing that's preventing us from casting it, but I don't think there is. So unfortunately that's probably a glitch with it. And we also drew Drowning Dreams, which means we didn't get our land for turn, so it's not really looking good for us. We won't pay for Smothering Tithe because we're just simply too far behind. We really have to do something here. So unfortunately with all of that, I think our options are pretty limited at the moment. I think all we can really do is cast our Cage Sun and just hope that we somehow miraculously survive till the next turn. And that is going to be our turn there. Smothering Tithe triggers, and they don't pay. They start by casting their commander, Averna the Chaos Bloom. As you cascade, you may put a land card from among the exiled cards onto the battlefield tapped. That triggers their Terror of the Peaks. So now they can do 4 damage to any target. And they target the Beast Whisperer. Now they cast Maelstrom Wanderer, and that has Cascade, Cascade. Creatures you control have haste, and it gives you the 2 triggers of Cascade. So we'll see the first Cascade trigger resolve, which casts Aurora Phoenix, which has its own Cascade trigger. It's a 5/3 flyer. Whenever you cast a spell with Cascade, return it from your graveyard to your hand. Now they get a Roiling Regrowth. Sack a land, search your library for up to 2 basic land cards, put them onto the battlefield, tap, then shuffle. They sack their island. They put their lands into play. That triggers their Terror of the Peaks. They have it target the Shaman of the Forgotten Ways. That triggers Laid to Rest, so they get to draw a card. Now the second Cascade trigger goes off. They put a land into play off their commander's ability. And they get a Harrow. As an additional cost to cast it, sack a land, search your library for up to 2 basic land cards, put them onto the battlefield, then shuffle. Well, they've definitely done a lot this turn, but it's still not enough to probably shut down the Torrens player. Now when Maelstrom ETBs, that triggers Terror of the Peaks again. Though in saying that, they have done quite a bit to remove some of their creatures using Terror of the Peaks. So it might be turning around just enough now, where it's actually the Averna player is going to be the one that the table has to worry about. And they do target the Heronblade Elite, which is really good because that was one of their big mana sources. That triggers Laid to Rest, so they'll gain 2 life and draw a card. Now they cast Natural Reclamation, targeting the Unnatural Growth, and it has Cascade itself. It's destroy target artifact or enchantment. They put a land into play. Now they get Mina and Den Wildborn. You can play an additional land on each of your turns, and red and a green return a land you control to its owner's hand. Target creature gains trample until end of turn. That triggers Terror of the Peaks. Now they target the Intrepid Adversary. So I think I spoke too soon. The Averna players definitely put the Torrens player under control, but in doing so, they've made themselves just as big a threat, even perhaps a little bit more. That triggers Laid to Rest. They get the 2 life and they draw a card. That goes through. Now they move to combat, but they decide to pass through it, and that is their turn done. And like the Torrens player, they certainly had a massive turn themselves. Fortunately for us, that probably keeps us in the game a little bit more now. Yarok's Mana Crypt triggers. Smothering Tithe triggers. And they don't pay. So what we'd really like to see here actually is them casting their Yarok, so we can actually clean that up in the All Is Dust as well. Get as many good targets as we possibly can. Now they do activate their Wasteland, and they're actually targeting a Shire here. Well, I've never seen that being done before, but we'll take it. A Shire is certainly a threat, that's for sure. So a Shire goes down. And now they cast a Toxic Deluge for X equals 5. As an additional cost to cast this spell, pay X life. All creatures get neg X until end of turn. Well, we're very happy to see that. Now, a lot of Laid to Rest triggers go on the stack. So they'll be gaining a bunch of life here, as well as drawing quite a few cards. So they go up to 52 life, and they draw 5 cards. And now they cast Reclamation Sage. Well, let's really hope it doesn't target our Cage Sun, because we really need that to start getting ahead in the game. That also triggers Guardian Project. No. They are actually targeting the Laid to Rest, thankfully. So we dodged a bullet there. They draw a card off of Guardian Project. That triggers Smothering Tithe, but they can't pay for it. So Torrens will get a treasure token. Now it looks like on the end step, the Torrens player has a spell. They cast Eladamri's Call. Search your library for a creature card, reveal that card, put it into your hand, then shuffle. Well, let's see what they get. And they get an Angel of Glory's Rise. Flying, when Angel of Glory's Rise enters the battlefield, exile all zombies, then return all human creature cards from your graveyard to the battlefield. Well, we definitely don't want to see that. We should just be lucky enough, hopefully, that they don't have any way to give them haste, but if they do, we're all definitely in big trouble. Now they play their land for turn, and they start by casting a Soul Ring. Now they cast the Angel of Glory's Rise. So they're going to be getting quite a bit back here now. Now that does trigger Heronblade Elite 3 times. Now they tap their Gaia's Cradle for 5 mana. And now they cast Catilda Dawnheart Prime. Protection from werewolves. Humans you control have tap. Add 1 mana of any of this creature's colors, and you can pay 6 and tap it to put a 1/1 counter on each creature you control. Now that actually causes the Yarok player to scoop up. That also triggers Heronblade Elite. Well, now it's down to 3 of us. And now they cast an Augur of Autumn, which triggers their Heronblade Elite. You can look at the top card of your library anytime. You may play lands from the top of your library, and it has Coven. As long as you control 3 or more creatures with different powers, you may cast creature spells from the top of your library. Now they move to combat, which triggers Lenore. They put the 1/1 counter on their Angel, and it looks like they're going to leave the turn there. So to be honest, I'm actually feeling really good at the moment. We've lost the Yarok player, which did show that they had some interaction to what we were doing, especially that Reclamation Sage. Smothering Tithe triggers. We're not actually going to pay, because we've got some big plays to do this turn. So now that we have our copy artifact in hand, I think the plan is copy our Caged Sun, so we're going to be able to we'll triple up our mana essentially from any of our blue lands. Then we'll be able to also get our All Is Dust into play, get rid of the Torrens player's board. And I feel like with 4 cards in hand, Averna isn't going to be too much of a threat, or at least we're going to have a bit of time to interact with it. So let's start by casting our copy artifact. We'll have it come into play as a copy of our Caged Sun. Now we have access to 9 mana, so we're actually going to tap all of our lands down. That'll give us access to 10 mana. Now we can cast our Chromatic Ori. Then we'll tap our Chromatic Ori. And now we're going to cast the All Is Dust. That goes through. That takes out pretty much most of Torrens' board. We have 4 mana left. And then what we'll do is we'll get down our Unwinding Clock, because that's going to give us enough mana to either use Resculpt or put some more cards in our hand with Drowning Dreams on the end of either player's turn. So let's do that. And that's going to be our turn done. Well guys, I think we're coming back in the game. I don't want to get too cocky, but I really feel like that's turned around for us. So hopefully let's swing it around and start putting a bit of pressure on our opponents. So Averna starts by casting Tatyova Benthic Druid. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, you can draw a card and gain a life. Now they cast Scoot Swarm. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, you make a 1/1 insect, and if you control 6 or more lands, you make a token copy of it. Now they do play a land for turn, which triggers Scoot Swarm and Tatyova. That makes a copy. Now they gain a life and draw a card. Now they cast a Scroll Rack. They can pay 1, exile any number of cards from their hand face down, put that many cards from the top of your library into your hand, then look at the exiled cards and put them on the top of your library in any order. And it looks like they're leaving it there for turn. Torrens plays a land. Now they start by casting Austere Command, choosing the modes to destroy all artifacts and destroy all creatures with mana value 3 or less. Well, I'm really happy that we kept this Arcane Denial up in our hands, so let's cast that. And it looks like we have a response from the Averna player. And they cast a Void Slime, counter target spell, activated ability, or triggered ability. So unfortunately, we can't do too much about that. But what we might do in response is actually get rid of their Tatyova, because I feel like that's going to gain them too much value over time, especially getting those landfall triggers and having those scoots get out of control. Now they activate their Scroll Rack in response. So our Resculpt goes through. Their Void Slime will counter our Arcane Denial. And unfortunately, the Austere Command will go through, so we were almost able to get there, but that's definitely set us quite back. So we're back to where we sort of were at the start of the game, where we were fairly behind. But luckily we do have Emery in our hand, so she can start to help us slowly rebuild a board if we get the time to do it. And that's it for the Torrens player. We draw a land for turn. So we'll start by playing that land. And then because we have so many juicy artifacts in our graveyard, I think we definitely want to get Emery down and online as soon as possible. So let's get her down. She will mill 4 cards on ETB, so we may also hit some other good artifacts as well. We'll see. She goes through, so her ETB trigger goes on the stack. And it looks like we only got a Sisay's Ring that was in there in addition to all the other cards that were there originally. And I think we'll just leave our turn there. Now with 2 cards in hand, I'm hoping they don't have any bomb cards, especially something with card advantage, because with all of the lands they have on the battlefield, they can certainly get ahead of the game if it is card advantage that they do have. So let's see what they've got, and just hope that isn't the case. They cast a Morag, Fury of Akoum. So it is a landfall trigger. Each creature you control gets +1/+0 for each time it's attacked this turn. And whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, if it's your main phase, there's an additional combat phase after this phase. At the beginning of that combat, untap all creatures you control. Now they just recast their commander, and it looks like that's it for their turn. Well, our life total being at 18 means that Morag is definitely a clock, and the Torrens player still does have 6 cards in hand, so I think it's still going to be a pretty uphill battle for us. They play a land. Now they cast Eternal Witness. Well, they're probably very happy to see that. Let's see what they target here. And I dare say it's going to be the Angel that gets all their humans back to the battlefield. And it is. And now they recast their commander. So it looks like we basically got one turn before that entire board state returns to the battlefield. And that's their turn done. So I don't know, I'm not liking our chances. So we draw a delay for turn. Well, I think there's only one card in our graveyard we should go for with Emery, and that'll be the Caged Sun to be able to double up our mana. So let's try to do that. And now we've just got to pass the turn and hope we can survive what the other two players are going to do. Averna starts by casting a Cultivate. Now I'm surprised they didn't do that in their second main phase, because they would get additional combat triggers off of their Morag. They would have actually just been able to kill us there outright, but maybe they feel they need us in the game, or it just might have slipped their mind. They play a land for turn. Now they move to combat. And they are swinging out both their creatures at us, so maybe they feel like they can handle the Torens player on their own. They don't need us there to be the meat shield for them. Oh, it looks like Magic Online has actually fixed it. For some reason, they did actually get their extra landfall triggers on their first main phase. Unless perhaps it happened in the second main phase and I just mistakenly didn't look at it right. So now in their second combat, they're sending their commander our way and Morag now over at the Torens player. They block with their Eternal Witness. So that takes us out of the game. So now it's just the Torens and Averna player left. Now Averna casts a Dryad of the Elysian Grove so they can play an additional land on their turns, and lands they control are every basic land type in addition to their other types. Torens starts by playing a land for turn, and it looks like they're just going to go straight for their Angel to reanimate all of their humans. And they do. That triggers their commander, so it makes a token. Well, not liking the position for the Averna player with 0 cards in hand and that board state about to come back on the Torren player's side. I don't know what they're going to be able to draw into to be able to handle that. With all those creatures ETBing, that triggers Heronblade Elite quite a number of times. They will also get back their Eternal Witness, so they'll have access to quite a few good cards. They might go for one of their finishes like Unnatural Growth, and they do target that with their Eternal Witness. And it looks like that's it, the Averna player has conceded. Well, let's go to the wrap up and discuss what happened. So that was quite an enjoyable game. It really swung back and forth, and though we came close to getting ahead at one point in the game, it just wasn't meant to be. The Averna player demonstrated the value that Cascade decks can produce consistently, and they were also key in keeping the Torens player in check, who would have run away with the game otherwise. They were also in a position to run away with the game themselves at one point, but a timely Toxic Deluge from the Yarok player stopped that from happening, and though it did slow down the Torens player also, they were able to resolve a few key cards which helped them take the game. Speaking of the Torens player, didn't they have a great game? They were off to a really strong start with that Gaia's Cradle, and that laid to rest really kept their hands full in the face of a lot of interaction. Not only this, but they were able to draw and resolve key cards they needed to at important points in the game. In particular, that Angel of Glory's Rise repeatedly coming back board wipe after board wipe was just too much value for the table to overcome. The Yarok player started to set up some strong value pieces on board, and they did provide some key interaction which changed the flow of the game. Unfortunately, they were just simply slower than the Averna and Torens player, and once the Torens player reanimated their board after a board wipe, the Yarok player simply felt it was over for the table and conceded the game. We had a bit of a tough game overall, taking some big damage from the Torens and Averna player, missing that recurring insight trigger, and also having that austere command go through despite having protection. But if we had countered that austere command, I think we would have been in a strong position to turn the game around, especially considering the board was clear of creatures. Well, that's it from me. I hope you enjoyed today's game and got to see just some of the potential that Memnarch has. I also hope it inspires you to build and play your own lists. Otherwise, until next time guys.